All right.
Technical difficulties, they done heard we are blowing up. We exposing something.
Right. Okay. So we shall continue here. Carrying on, provided, however, that said lands thus subscribed shall not be sold or demised or occupied by anyone not a citizen of the Choctaw or Chickasaw nations, according to their laws and recognized usage. Okay.
So what they're going
Provided.
to do,
Go ahead.
It looks like they're going to devour nations west of the Mississippi and just put them under Choctaw, Chickasaw. Whoever they encountered, yeah, they're going to put them under them and then lead. So what they'll do, it's almost like a version of the boule. They're giving the Choctaw and Chickasaw the option of choosing what Americans they want to bring as citizens under their nation. So what if you Kansas? Or what if you Wyoming? What if you Utah?
Right.
Yeah, so they saying we finna take your land, we finna destroy it, we finna lay this railroad, but we'll give you the option to being a citizen of our nation if they give you that option.
Correct.
Which
Wow. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's giving them this sense of superiority.
Classism.
You know, yeah. Yeah.
Trying to make a classism within their own structure kind of mirror what they're going to do. They being the United States, they've already highlighted their white citizens, and we'll see everything after that. So yeah, wow.
Okay.
can I say one more thing real quick? Not going biblical, but there's an allegory where it says the serpent has a split tongue. When we read their documents, one of the things that we have to do is we have to use both sides of our brain, because the tongue is split. So they'll say one thing and then they'll contradict it in the next fragment of a sentence. And you have to be able to play ping pong on which side of your brain are they talking. That's what I'm getting from it. It's like it's the serpent, but we have to make it into a make-believe animal. No, it's their pin game is mean because it
confusion. They have a mastery in like confusion as far as you know what they're writing out, casting these or spelling, putting this out into you, casting a spell, writing this stuff onto whoever they're trying to have pretty much sign away whatever they want.
Yeah, definitely have been successful through all these readings that we've gone through this last year.
Yeah.
Okay, so provided that officers, servants, and employees of such companies necessary to the construction and management of said management of said road or road shall not be excluded from such occupancy as their respective functions may require, they being subject to the provisions of the Indian intercourse law and such rules and regulations as may be established by the Secretary of the Interior. Okay. Provided that the officer, servants, and employees of such companies necessary to the construction, hold on, and management of said road shall not be excluded. What is that saying? I'm a little confused there.
Seeing here is the occupancy. I'm believing they're referring to that stock of land at 6 miles of space that they would have right to occupy that land at least while they're still working on said.
Got you.
At least that's how I'm reading it.
Okay.
Shall not be excluded from such occupancy as their respective functions may require. So yeah, as long as they're working on the land, I guess they can, or working on that land for the railroad, I'm guessing they can stay there.
Okay. And provided also that the stock thus subscribed by either of said nation shall have the force and effect of a first mortgage bond on all that part of said road appurtenances and 9-to-1 equipment situated and used within said nations respectively, and shall be a perpetual lien on the same and the said nation shall have the right from year to year to elect to receive their equitable portion of declared dividends of profits on their said stock or interest on the par value of the rate of 6%. So basically, they're setting up the terms right there of what their interest is in this land, that they're, really making it seem like the Choctaw and Chickasaw have some type of power over it, but they're basically setting up their financial plan right here of what their interest and return is going to be, if I'm reading that correctly. Per annum. Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, what was y'all explanation of what she read previous to that? I didn't hear it because I was if y'all look in the chat, I had put a note in the chat where it says provided that the officers, servants, and employees. What did y'all share on that part?
That they would be able to occupy that land being that space of 6 miles on each side of that railroad in regards to what was that, the Choctaw or Chickasaw having stock within that company. So they'll be able to purchase stock, and then whatever is on 6 miles left or right or wherever of that railroad, they'll be able to have ownership of or occupy. But they're saying that as long as these workers or employees are actually working on the railroad within those areas, then they can occupy that land, those 6 miles, either on either side of the railroad. That's what I got from it.
All right, so now that brings, I'm back on, so now that brings us to what she just read. Let me see.
Definitely sounds like a lot of terms in regards to what they'll be able to do, how they'll be able to exercise some of these dividends, or what is that? What would that be called? These funds that they were given, provided by or approved by the president.
Yeah, they just basically they just took their land from them. Where it starts off saying, where we at? Okay, that the stock, yeah, right there where you are, down to the left. Yep, that the stock thus subscribed by either of said nations shall have the force and effect of a first mortgage bond, and all that part of said road appurtenance and equipment situated and used within said nation. Now what they're doing is you've lost the land and all the resources that come out of the land. Now what they're doing is they're putting you into a mortgage. So they're selling these nations to a bank. Because we're talking mortgage or deed, we're talking bank. And like you said earlier, Chief Biko, when you talk absolute title, that supersedes a bank.
Correct.
Because if you're using gold and actual silver, you don't need their banking system.
Correct. You paid off your debt according to the Constitution.
Right. So they're putting them under their banking system. And then that next part says, and shall be a perpetual lien on the same. You'd never get from up under it.
Right, forever.
What is that called? Property tax. You're going to continue to pay this property tax.
And this is where it started. This is where it started right here.
So now
breaking away from the absolute title.
Yeah.
So this is where it started.
And that's a great, so what we have to do as Americans, when we tie ourselves to the land, there's no need for a banking system. Well, you would use the banking system, but the banking system, the way it was when it was a de jure nation, you would take your Federal Reserve note in today's world, you should be able to take $100 bill Federal Reserve note. You should be able to take that to Wells Fargo, and they in turn give you gold and silver that equates to that. That's not what the bank does.
No.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The bank is supposed to take that IOU note because that's all it is. When you give that note, you're saying, hey, your government owes me this amount in gold or silver based on this note that I got that denotes $100. We're so far removed from what a banking system should be.
Right.
Now what the bank just does is it just holds those
IOU notes.
Yeah.
It created derivatives off the absolute title, i.e. mortgage and deed. And so now those banks, they're just getting your perpetual interest.
You'll never pay off this debt because we're not even playing with that currency anymore. You see what I'm saying? We're no longer even dealing with gold and silver. So yeah, it just shows, they got them in the matrix, this one. They got them completely underneath their system. They are no longer a nation because like you said, they're basically a state now. And we look at it that way. So man, okay. And interest per value or interest per year, 6%.
Yeah. Per annum. And and it is further declared in this connection that as fast as section of 20 miles in length are completed, with the rails laid ready for use, with all water and other stations necessary to the use thereof, as a first-class road, the said company or companies shall become entitled to patents for the alternate sections aforesaid.
Stop right there.
So that would be land patents.
Right. So now what we're seeing is the difference between a mortgage. We're giving the Choctaw and Chickasaw nations mortgages, but the owners of the railroad companies land
patents for the alternative sections aforesaid.
Which one is more powerful is my question.
Right. The land patents.
Exactly.
And may proceed to dispose thereof in the manner herein provided for, subject to approval of the Secretary of the Interior. Now, what exactly does the Secretary of the Interior, what I would like to know specifically, what do they
look it up.
Do?
Yeah,
look it up. I know the Secretary of
several
Interior.
Times.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Chief Biko.
No, I was gonna say I agree with Chief Quietwater because we've seen that several times during this article.
Yeah.
And we've seen it in treaties as well, where prior to them moving west of the Mississippi, that they were referring these American tribes to the Secretary of Interior. When you look it up, what does it say, Chief Quietwater?
Oh, I thought Chief Biko. Hold on, let's see.
So we can clearly see how they empowered these railroad company owners.
Is the Secretary of the Interior is the chief executive of the U.S. Department of the Interior. They oversee. Hold on.
I see some here. Manages the use of public lands, prevents exploitation of natural resources, maintains national parks and national monuments, and implements other various forms of environmental protection. So pretty much just manage the land.
Okay.
That's proving more proof of military occupation, because you've got the United States government, which is a foreign government set up by we the people who are not the American. And now they've created a department called the Secretary of Interior, and they're managing the damn resources that come out the land.
How can they do that too? Because they got that absolute title, so they're able to create derivatives off of that. Like you said, land patents, mortgages, because they have the absolute title. Damn. Yeah. Further proof of military occupation.
Wow.
And that's interesting.
So they get it.
I wonder at what point did our ancestors lose their stash? And when I say their stash, I'm talking about their reserve of gold and silver and oil. Like at what point, we know Tulsa was an oil town, right? So at what point did we lose Fort Knox? Because see, in our mind, we give them credit as if it's there, and they claim it because they took it.
Right.
But when they say it's our land, if you're the American, you're supposed to feel a certain type of way, like, no, but I understand what you're saying. You took it, but I wonder when did we lose all of these resources to their government? I'm willing to in the early 20th century during the world wars as we move forward.
Yeah, because what we think about, if we just thinking about, gold rush, what was that?
It's coming up shortly after this period.
After this?
Yeah, when they hit the gold rush in California, and but remember, it was a gold rush to them.
Correct.
We already were doing business with gold.
Yeah,
all over the world, on our mouths, on our bodies, bearing ourselves. It's a gold rush to them. Why? There's no gold coming out of Europe. There's no gold in Europe.
And that's what I'm thinking too. Like, we weren't even looking at gold as a sense of currency or anything. We just probably, again, jewelry or highlight certain aspects or something. But yeah. Okay. But we ended off here. Got about 5 minutes. We should be able to.
So we can finish this.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. It's further declared in this connection that as fast as a section of 20 miles in length are completed with the rails laid ready for use with all water and other stations necessary to the use thereof as a first-class citizen road, the said company or company shall become entitled to patent for the alternative sections aforesaid and may proceed to dispose thereof in the manner herein provided for the subject to the approval of the Secretary of Interior. I already read that. So number 3, and it is further declared also in case of one or more of said alternative sections being occupied by any member or members of said nations respectively, so that the same cannot be transferred to the said company or companies, that the said nation or nations respectively may select any unoccupied section or sections as near as circumstances will permit to the said width of 6 miles of each side of the said road or roads, and convey the same as an equivalent for the section or sections so occupy as aforesaid. That's a lot.
You don't stop.
Well, I mean, it was kind of awkward there was no good stopping point.
It was a joke.
So in the case. I'm not sure.
Okay, so once again, they're being debowed. So, and it is further declared also in case of one or more of the said alternative sections. They're talking about on either side of these railroads as they run this railroad system, being occupied by any member or members of said nations respectively, so that the same cannot be transferred to the said company. So if y'all on the left side of the railroad, when you get into, let's say, Kansas City, you can't transfer that to the railroad company. That the said nation or nations respectively may select any unoccupied section or sections. Okay, so you're pushing them further away from the train system because you're telling them that they may select any unoccupied section or sections. Well, what if they just flood the zone with immigrants? Then you ain't gonna have no unoccupied sections to
Right.
Then it says as near as circumstances will permit. Yeah, so they're telling you that you can get any occupied section, but then, hey, it's up to us whether we consider it, it's up to us whether we permit you to occupy that area.
Occupy, right, okay.
To the said width of 6 miles on each side of the road or roads. That's military occupation. They're telling you, they're roping you off. You can only go 6 miles. Yeah, you ain't free. You can't just set up shop where you want to set up shop.
Wow.
and convey the same as an equivalent for the section or sections so occupied, as Afra said. Yeah, this is military. This is just the military telling them where to go. You've been demilitarized at this point. This Choctaw Chickasaw nation that went west of the Mississippi, they basically just got you by bayonet, just walking you wherever they want you. Oh, well, you can't stay here no more because we got the railroad coming. So we need you to move over here.
Mm-hmm.
You're on mute.
That sums it up.
I was gonna say basically, like you just said, you can't go here. This is already occupied by our European immigrants that we put, in these sections. And yeah, it's only giving them a limited space, 6 miles on each side. That's pretty much unoccupied. So I'm pretty much sure they're going to be having their people occupy the closest areas to that train station, because those are the people that's going to be using it constantly. They're citizens. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, why would we put our citizens off in, these other places when this is specifically for them to be using?
Right.
And think about it. You're bringing over unskilled prisoners from Europe. They're setting up a supply chain west of the Mississippi because those railroads are going to bring supplies from the east to the west. So what if they use those Americans, or what if those, well, we already know there were towns already there with the Kansas people and anybody that was west. So they're going to run those people out of their town, run a railroad through it, and then push them 6 miles out and then bring the immigrants in to live in said town. That's how they populated West.
That's the same thing that sounds like what they did with the highway system. Put them smack dab into our neighborhoods. You think of the West End, run that interstate I-20 right through.
Eminent domain.
Yeah.
Eminent, again, yep, eminent domain.
And that's just a fancy word for military occupation. Go ahead, Chief Biko.
No, you're right. You hit nail on the head right there. Because what you're saying, it sounds exactly like just further steps along the lines. Okay, we got the railroad system now. Cars are becoming more fashionable, people are more affordable. Okay, let's run these interstates that can travel between each of these states right through their neighborhoods. Who cares? We'll buy them out. If they don't want to buy out, we'll destroy them anyway. And keep it moving. Just like this. Permitted, we may give you, compensation for whatever destruction, but probably not. Same type of ordeal.
Let's go back real quick in our minds to like a cowboy Indian movie, what they call a cowboy American movie. If you've ever seen a Western, when you see those little towns and the railroad would pull up, that was your people living in that town. But at some point, the military pushed them 6 miles out. You got to go to an unoccupied area because this is within the 6 miles of the railroad. So that's how they were. Look at it that way. Think of a Western. Those were American towns, melanated people. And when they came in with this 1866 Indian Treaty, they swooped those people under the Choctaw Chickasaw Nation, pushed you further out because now we need that town because it's 6 miles with the railroad. And
the resources are more easily accessible to those towns closest. So now you have to come to our town just to get the resources that you would have already had first dibs on. So again, paying or shopping at non-American businesses.
Correct. Now, one last brain thought on that. This is a prime example. We need somebody that's west of the Mississippi to do what we're doing.
Connect it.
They can tell us the story of what happened to them.
Right.
Because there's wars that were because think about it, as they're intruding on these nations with this railroad, you're going to get your big horn, little horn. We've heard of these things, but we don't really know. So this is where Americans that are west of the Mississippi, that's why we need y'all to do these steps so we can start understanding what happened over there.
Start connecting the dots.
So they suppressed the information about the Seminole Wars that we haven't had no clue about. it's probably wars that were fought west of the Mississippi that was suppressed that we had no clue about as well. But there may be some people who may be on the same journey from the Oklahoma, the Kansas, and things like that, that may, you know, and they just not being heard on a massive level, you know. And those highly educated people that may be from the west of the Mississippi know the information, just not passing the information along.
Correct. And I will say on my during the road trip, I definitely saw a lot of Navajo stretching from definitely from Nevada pretty much into Oklahoma or getting or Texas area. So Navajo was all through Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, all of those states there. So again, like you said, we can get somebody who's on that side just to connect the dots, because we can use this as the railroad, like this railroad example. As they continue to build, they're also having people do the same thing on that side.
Exactly.
Okay, what happened to these, you know, Kansas nations or these other nations that was already in these areas that the Chickasaw and Choctaw have now supplanted and been given, you know, access to these areas. So
yeah,
excellent point.
I know we come to the end, but if we can just take this moment and let's just go back to what California did with the reparations study. This is why you cannot put us all in a group of slaves. Because if you're saying that everybody descended from a slave, then what happens to the people that were running the town in Tulsa, Rosewood, and all the other towns that are in America? You have to think bigger than the fact that we was all on military work camps. And if you believe that we all descend from slaves that have great grandparents on this land, buried in this land, then how do you explain that there's more people in slavery in 2022 than it is? Right. So you contradict, again, no disrespect to the highly schooled of us, but you're not making sense.
Right.
There's more of us in prison now that's a form of slavery. It's more slaves now in 2022 than it was in 1865.
Correct.
If you're saying that we all descended from slaves, how do you explain all the towns?
Facts.
General Sherman just told you in Special Order 15 that we had everything from South Carolina to Florida. So what happens to those people that got their towns burnt down? Are you saying that they don't need to be repaired? They weren't Americans? What's y'all thought on that as we get ready to close out? Just how they have to broaden their mind, and then you're excluding the manufacturer. These inventors invented manufacturing industries.
Right.
When King integrated us through the Civil Rights Act, they outsourced our manufacturing. When King integrated us as citizens, the United States government then took control of what our ancestors invented, and they sent it to China.
Yeah.
Here we are 50 years later, we don't make anything anymore, and then your highly schooled Negroes make it seem like that's a menial type of job. What are you talking about? That's a derivative of something that an American invented. We're supposed to be owning and operating that, not Asia. Go ahead, y'all.
No, we just highlighted how somebody saw a necessity, built something for that need in the soil pulverizer, and now we've seen that been built upon like a Lego.
Right.
Okay, we're going to add this to it to make it, to make it more efficient. Okay, broaden the industry. Could have had the whole agricultural game on lock.
Exactly. Same thing with everything that makes this landmass function. We had parts of it. So
yeah, it's crazy. And then, like you said, just got to be specific. And like you said, it's narrow-minded to put slavery or American descendants of slavery. Broader term would be that prisoners of war, because now you can highlight again, like you stated, those wars that were happening in Tulsa, that destruction of that land, redlining, segregation, Jim Crow, things of that nature. If you're saying slavery was ended in 1865, then all the stuff that happened after that, then no inventions that we created that were patents could be reparations. things of that nature, right? So prisoner of war, military occupation, and we're highlighting how that happened. We're reading exactly a document that's highlighting exactly the military occupation and how it was set up. Interior, Secretary of Interior. What do they have land over? What do they have control over managing? The land. Because the American no longer has the absolute title of said land because it's underneath a military department. Prisoners of war, people, military occupation.
Very clear.
We're pain freaks. They really want to continue to be United States citizens, even though the same government will kill your kids. You understand? Like they really, like they don't want to really be repaired, because to be repaired means you got to get all your shit back.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's amazing how we'll still have faith in the government that's benign and neglecting you and killing you.
It's that, and they don't want to do the work.
Right. That's the main thing. Start there.
Yeah, they don't want to do the work. The industries that our forefathers, our inventors created, they say, do I really want to, actually start inventing stuff again? Or do I want to just, collect the quote unquote check from it and not actually manage these industries?
Right.
I think it's a thing of both. They want to be a part of the citizen and they don't want to do the work.